Every day we're surrounded by information. It comes through our phones, our computers, the news, social media, conversations, books, podcasts, non-stop streams. We're flooded. But Taleb makes a sharp claim that all this information, or at least most of it anyway, is noise. It's not 50% or 60%, but 95%. This isn't a catchy phrase, but to him it's a warning. In a world where data is abundant and attention is currency, our ability to separate what's useful, which is signal, from what's meaningless, which is noise, isn't just important. It's survival. If we don't understand the difference, we make worse decisions, waste time, and fool ourselves, especially in finance. Let's break it down. Taleb defines noise as random, meaningless variation that masquerades as information. It looks important but has no real-world impact. For example, it's the takes that we see on Twitter, the hourly stock ticker, the news flash about market movement that basically gets reversed a day later. It's the endless chatter that doesn't change the big picture but pretends to. Let's use an example that Taleb uses indirectly. Imagine you're tracking someone's health. You weigh them every hour, the data bounces around slightly up, slightly down. If you obsess over every small change, you're tracking noise. But if you weigh them once a week for a year, you might see a clear trend, which is maybe gaining or losing weight consistently. That is signal. Most people though are glued to the hourly changes, and that's the problem. When you react to noise, you're reacting to basically randomness. You're being fooled by patterns that don't exist, and you start building beliefs on nothing. This is dangerous in finance, in health, in business, in geopolitics. It's in anything that depends on decision making under uncertainty. And here's the irony. Noise usually feels more urgent, it shouts, but signal is quiet and implicit. If noise is mostly worthless, then why do we consume it so eagerly? First, we're wired for it. Humans evolved in environments where reacting to quick changes could mean survival. Sudden movements in the grass could be a predator. Unexpected silence in the jungle might signal danger. Being tuned into small fluctuations used to make sense. But we're not in the jungle anymore. The modern world of finance throws far more data at us than our brains were designed to handle. What used to be a survival advantage becomes a flaw. We confuse motion with thinking. We think if it's new, it must be important. That's almost never true. Second, our culture rewards noise. The media doesn't profit from clarity, it profits from engagement. And noise is excellent at driving engagement. Flashy headlines, constant updates, emotional hooks. That is by design. If the system gave you any signal, you stop watching. Signal is slow, however, but slow doesn't make money. Third, it feels responsible to stay informed. People mistake being up to date with being prepared. But information isn't power. Understanding is power. And drowning in constant updates doesn't give you actual understanding. It just gives you anxiety. You think you're doing your due diligence, but you're actually just reacting to fluctuations. Taleb is more blunt than I am. He often says that more data leads to worse decisions, especially when it's short-term, low quality, and emotionally charged. That's noise, not signal. And the more you consume it, the harder that it becomes to see signal. There's also something psychological going on. Humans generally hate uncertainty, so we reach for anything that feels like an explanation, even if it's wrong. Noise offers that. It feels like clarity, but that's dangerous. It leads to overconfidence, shallow narratives, and fragile conclusions, and ultimately worse decision making under pressure. Taleb doesn't just say that some information is noise, he argues that almost all of it is. His rough estimate, 99% of what we see is noise, only 1% is signal. In markets, this becomes obvious. Look at the stock's price minute by minute, and you'll see wild movement, up, down, sideways. Try to trade on that sort of timeline, and more often than not, you probably lose. But zoom out to years and real trends might emerge. That's signal. Everything else becomes noise. And most financial media, most analysts, most daily commentary, they are reacting to the noise and pretending that it's meaningful. The 99 to 1 rule also applies to other areas, like for example in health, 1 or 2 habits or sleep, exercise, diet matter far more than the 50 headlines that you read about miracle foods or one-off studies. In politics, structural forces, long-term demographics, or certain wars explain more than daily cycles. And also in your personal life as well. Your long-term character, repeated choices, and values shape outcomes far more than daily mood swings or what's trending in your mind at the moment. But here's what makes the 99 to 1 signal brutal. Noise is usually louder, sexier, and easier to consume. And when you mistake noise for signal, you start forming beliefs based on randomness. You chase false trends, you panic, you pivot too often. Taleb's core point is this. You must be aggressive in filtering out information. Don't trust your intuition about what's meaningful. Question it. Be skeptical. Assume it's noise until proven otherwise. This isn't necessary, but in finance, in order to make good choices, it's often necessary. Start with this test. Does this information change your behavior in a meaningful long-term way? If not, it's probably noise. And even if it feels useful, ask whether it will matter next week or next year. If it won't, delete it. Professionals who deal with real risk, traders, military leaders, hedge fund managers, surgeons, often adopt this mindset by necessity. They don't have time for fluff. The cost of acting on noise is too high. In cases, especially with the military, it's life or death. For the rest of us, however, the cost is much more subtle. Stress, poor choices, shallow understanding, wasted time, or even bad financial decisions. But over time, those costs add up. Just like noise drowns a signal in an audio recording, it drowns a signal in your thinking. You lose your edge and you think you're learning, but you're being distracted.